Okay, let's talk a little bit about Battlestar Galactica after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and today we're going to do another in our mini series of things to watch while we're sheltering in place, or whatever you wish to call our current situation, where many of us are having to stay home or do very limited movement about town. We're noticing already that a lot of television production is not happening at the moment, and it's causing some series to be delayed, either because they're still in post production and production people are working at home, or because we have possibility of producers wanting to kind of wait until they can get the best bang for the buck before they put their newest episodes out. It's uncertain exactly what they're doing right now, at least with regard to sci-fi series. But considering the amount of special effects that go in and the complexity of a lot of the effects, that could have a lot to do with the delays that we're seeing so far. Last we heard, shows like Discovery were supposed to come in the latter part of April. Somebody said even the 23rd, and as this is being recorded on the 25th, I think that that's probably a little premature to say that it's coming back anytime real soon. We may not see it until maybe the 1st of June, but that's just a guess on my part, nothing definite. Anyway, however it is, I hope you're doing all right. So far, my family is still doing just fine. The situation is we're keeping an eye on and hoping that some breakthrough will come that will relieve us of some of our ennui. At any rate, today we're going to talk about Battlestar Galactica, and there is a whole universe of Battlestar Galactica, of TV series, of movies, of sequels and prequels and comic books and novels and things such as this. But I think we're going to focus on the three main series that were called Battlestar Galactica or similar. So let's start with the original show. This was a creation by Glenn Larson, and he used special effects expertise of John Dykstra, who had been on the group that had worked on Star Wars. And Star Wars had just hit the theaters the summer before and was a huge hit, of course, as you know. And so there was a lot of pressure to come up with TV series on it. And there were a few series that were made, and some of them were pretty bad. But Battlestar Galactica had some interesting ideas that were based on actual Mormon tradition, seeing that Glenn Larson is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, and so some of the general ideas in creating the world came from that. As the series opens up, we find that there are a human race that comes from an ancestral planet called Kobol. They are on 12 different planets which are based on zodiac signs. There's Caprica and Sagittarian and Libran and other things like that. And so, of all of these colonies that they call them, they had been at war for quite some time with machines. Cylons, they called them, kind of a portmanteau of cybernetic automatons that apparently were created by humans, but then turned on the humans and started a war with them. And there were wars, and at the beginning of this series, there was a peace settlement where the Cylons and the humans were going to sign a peace accord. They had the entire fleet stood down of battle stars and other types of ships, and the only one that wasn't there was the Battlestar Galactica. The Commander Adama, who was kind of an elder among the military commanders, did not believe that the Cylons had the best intentions and showed up late for the big peace ceremony and showed up somewhat after the attack began on Caprica and the other colonial worlds. The humanity was left in tatters, and it was up to Adama with the last Battlestar Galactica to try to gather what people were left and evacuate them from the area to try to run away from the Cylons, since they had a completely devastated military that could not defeat them. And so what they had left of humanity, loaded on every kind of transport or cruise ship that they could get on, and created kind of a convoy moving at slow speed out of their known star system and toward a mythical planet that they believe perhaps existed called Earth. An interesting idea here. Earth would have been the lost tribe, as it were, a 13th colony that would be powerful enough, they thought, to help them defeat the Cylons. Because of television standards during the day, there were not very many curse words that you could say. And so they created their own, so it would seem like they were more natural in speaking with each other. And so they came up with Felgercarb, which is akin to excrement and used as generally a term that means nonsense. They had frack, which probably is close enough to an actual word to be understood, and various other things. They had also words to describe certain things, like prostitute was called a socialator. Just enough to show that these were maybe humans, but they certainly weren't from Earth. They had their own kind of culture. They were based kind of on Egyptians and Mayans, and so their helmets and things like that had a certain influenced by the Egyptians and the Mayans and the Aztecs. They also were popular for having a robot dog, which was called Muffet, and it was actually played by a chimpanzee in a suit. Lorne Greene played the part of Adama. His son Apollo and Apollo's best friend were fighter pilots. The best friend was named Starbuck. Starbuck was kind of a Han Solo type, and played by Dirk Benedict, who later played essentially the same character in the A-Team. So it went this way. The only thing is that it got old kind of fast, and it only lasted for about one season. And then because of ratings, it was canceled. A couple of years later, they came out with a series called Galactica 1980, in which they recast just about everybody except for Lorne Greene as Adama, and it was in the children's hour. It was kind of infantile, unfortunately. They got away from some of their code speak curse words altogether. They had actually arrived at Earth, and due to the fact they had almost no budget, they were playing basically the aliens on Earth, trying to figure out how Earthlings live. It was not a great show, and it didn't last more than about 10 episodes. There have been other efforts to make a sequel to the series, but we'll go past that and go to the real successful one, which started, I believe, in 2010, which was also called Battlestar Galactica. It started as a TV movie and then was made into a series. And this time they decided that all of the characters would have real names. You know, in 12 colonies of human beings, it seems interesting to me they would all have only first names. You'd run out of names after a time. So they filled that out a little bit. They humanized these people a little bit more. Commander Adama was then William Adama. His son Apollo was actually his call sign for his fighter jet. Apollo, Starbuck, and Boomer were all call signs, where Apollo's name was really Lee Adama, and Starbuck's real name was Kara Thrace, now played by a woman, so was Boomer. And also, the Cylons, rather than being mirror-like robots, are now humanoid-looking, and some of them are not known to be Cylons, but rather are working as spies among the humans. So with all of that, they gave it a much more gritty texture. They got rid of most of the buzzwords except for frack, which was used an awful lot in the reboot. Edward James Olmos was playing Commander Adama, and had said in a interview when they rebooted the series that if they showed any little green men, he would quit. And so what we saw here was mostly a drama about human interaction. It goes back to the original idea of the original series, but treated much more realistically rather than the idealized people. These are normal people with normal foibles. Commander Ty was alcoholic. There was a lot of hanky-panky below decks. There were people that weren't doing their jobs properly. And then there was even the suggestion that the Earth that they were headed for, they didn't even believe existed, and was just using that as a way of maintaining control over the people. Plus, they added in a politician. She was like the Secretary of Agriculture or something like that, who was the last living person in the government and became the president. And so there was a lot of conflict between the president and Adama, the commander. And so there was a lot of drama here, and the cooperative and friction angle between these characters. So the first one is interesting. The first series is interesting to watch just to see how they created the world and the universe that they lived in. It had some good points in it, but does not hold up to time real well. However, the reboot series with Edward James Olmos is gripping, and even people that don't like science fiction that much were enthralled with this because it was telling real people stories. So if you're looking for something to view, this is on video everywhere. There is, of course, Battlestar Galactica, Galactica 1980, not recommended. The reboot Battlestar Galactica, another spin-off called Caprica, and and several other spin-offs on that. I'm told that they're all very good. While it can be somewhat soap opera-ish, it is a very enjoyable series, and there are, I think, 4 or 5 seasons of that, so there's plenty to enjoy if you're looking for something to watch. So, once again, I hope everybody is doing well. I hope there has not been any tragedy among you and yours. I'm happy to report that we're all doing fine, and we'll be back with another video next week. So until then, don't go far.